Hello, my name is Evangelist Barbara Drury. I'm better known as the jail minister, the Jailhouse angel, through my healing ministry in the Black Church since 1961. I have a few testimonies I'm going to give to you today, followed by prayer for the sick. So those who need prayer or need it for somebody else, stand by, and I'll tell you what to do when that time comes. Through my jail ministry, I had a Bible class at the city jail for 12 years, every Thursday night. And one afternoon I decided to visit the jail in a snowstorm, and there was a big guard by the name of Tex who didn't appreciate me coming into the jail and praying for the fellows there at the jail or seeing them at all. He was prejudiced, and on my visit that particular day, he was on the elevator taking me up to the 6th floor, and he began crying, and I asked Tex what was wrong. And he told me that he and his wife had just had a baby, and it wasn't expected to live through the night, and asked me if I'd go to Furman Deloge Hospital to pray for the little baby. And I said, of course, if you'll have prayer with me now by stopping the elevator, which he did, and we had prayer. And after I left the jail, I went to the hospital to see the baby. The wife was with the baby, and they took the baby home the next day. That was over 30 years ago. I became Tex's best friend then. The next case was James Wallace from East St. Louis, Illinois. Several members of his family had been healed, and he was in an automobile accident, which tempted the doctors to remove a leg because it was so badly damaged and gangrene had set in. So they took him to Homer G. Phillips Hospital, where they were going to amputate the leg. So his wife would not sign for it, and they called me over to pray for James. Well, the next day, scabs came on the leg, and the gangrene left, and he has that leg today, 30 years or more today. And another case was Reverend Jones, who was a member of the Leonard Baptist Church, where my healing ministry began, on Grand and Page. He caught me going into the church one morning and asked me if I would go to Homer G. to pray for him. They were going to remove an eye because it would damage the other eye. It was impaired, and they wanted to remove the eye, and asked me if I'd come to pray for him, which I did. And the next day after I visited Reverend Jones, the doctor came in, and he covered up his good eye and told him what kind of tie he had. And he went and got nine other doctors to come in, and he told them all the same thing, and he still has that eye. Isn't God good? But you have to have faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen. Faith is believing without seeing. Now, seeing something is not believing it because you can see it. But Reverend Jones had the faith to believe that God would heal his eye, which he did. Now faith without works is dead. If we have all the faith in the world but don't have any works to show for it, well, my goodness, what kind of faith do you call that anyway? I don't call it very much faith. When I first started healing services at Leonard Baptist on Saturday morning, they carried a little girl in to me who was 5 or 6 years old. And she lived in a playpen because she couldn't walk. The doctor said she'd never go to school. Sheila was her name, and I remember that all these years. They said she'd never be able to comb her hair, never be able to walk, never go to school, and I have her picture today, standing up, combing her hair, and she was in school. She had been demon-possessed. That's when the devils take your body over, and you might as well be dead in order to live the way the demon would have you to live. So they sent me that picture, and I've had it enlarged and hung it in my house. Another case was a young man who grew up with my children in the neighborhood in Normandy by the name of Steve. He and my boy were in high school at this time when this happened. And I married them down in the park from our house, and they were happy until she decided to leave Steve. So Steve told her that if she left, he'd take the shotgun and blow his head off. So she left, and Steve took the shotgun, put it below the chin, and pulled the trigger. Well, Rick called me late that night and told me what had happened, and Steve wasn't supposed to live through that night. So I went over there to the hospital, and he'd been in a coma for several weeks. And when I spoke to the doctor told me he wouldn't live through the night. That I said, "Oh yes, he will." He said if he did live, he wouldn't be able to talk. It shattered his tongue. "Oh yes, he will," I said. So then he said, well, if he lived, he'd lose the sight of his eye because it grazed the eye and came out the size of a dime over that eye. I said, he won't lose that sight in that eye. And all those three things happened to Steve. He talks as well as you and I today. I went home that night. My phone rang and I heard, it was Steve. You can't see where the bullet exited his forehead up here today. And he has perfect sight. What a miracle these things are. I wonder why people don't believe in miracles more today. I mean, enough to see them happen. Believing in them and seeing them happen are two different things entirely. Now, I have to write this book to get these testimonies told before the Lord takes me home, because they're too valuable for the world not to hear.